December means 24 drams of whiskey in 24 days. I've made it through all of them for December 2021, and now it's time for me to wrap up and talk about my favorites and some of my thoughts about the Flaviar Advent Calendar this year. Let's do this. Welcome to Whisky Riffs. If you're new here, I'm Kevin. Thank you for stopping by. This is my wrap-up video for this Flaviar Advent Calendar series for December 2021. I've gone through all 24 drams, and if you missed any of those episodes, there's a link below in the description that you can look at and watch them. If you've been with me for the whole time, I appreciate that greatly. And I'm going to give you my thoughts on what whiskeys I liked best, and one that stood out a little bit for a reason that I'll get to in just a second. For now, this box has served its purpose well. It was a good journey. I appreciate what Flaviar put in here and the whiskeys that it introduced me to. I've learned some new things about America, about different countries around the world, and that sometimes it's really hard to guess which country a whiskey is from because they have gotten very similar in a lot of ways, which will probably come up in this tasting as well. Let me set this box aside so we can get to the actual tastings. All right, now that that whiskey-free shell of a box is out of the way, I have room for the bottles that I've selected to do a tasting. I have 11 of them here. One is a different whiskey than the rest, and I'll let you know that it's all because of you and your wonderful comments. Many of you said that the first whiskey that I'm going to taste, because I need to get that special one out of the way, had a note that I did not taste when I first tasted it. But luckily, I have these bottles. They were big enough, they're 50 milliliters, that I have plenty of whiskey left to taste. And since I have 11 of them, I'm not going to be pouring quite the normal pours that I pour. In fact, if you see me pour the rest of any of these bottles, you know I'm in trouble. So the first one is Rogue Spirits Dead Guy Whiskey. Now this is one that I struggled with a bit. I had trouble with the notes at first, and I think my main takeaway from that was funky. Now, you were better than me, and you came up with notes like chocolatey. Now, chocolatey wasn't something I got, but I'd like to see if I get that this time. Looking at the flavor notes, they got coffee, smoky, honey, vanilla, caramel, cereal, malty, and orange zest down there too. I got some of that. I don't see chocolate on theirs, but you said chocolate, and that made me very curious. The funkiness is gone. I'm not tasting that again. So, as I said before, tasting a whiskey a second or third time can really help you decide whether it's a whiskey you like or don't like. The first tasting may not be representative of what you actually feel about a whiskey. And this one, I'm getting more of the orange zest. Still not getting a lot of sweetness there. I thought I had a hint of that chocolate note. Power suggestion strong when I first nosed it, but I'm losing that now. Definitely feeling like this is more of a smoky whiskey than I originally tasted. The ABV on this of 40% is a little lower than I would have thought because there is a lot of spice for me. I can taste the maltiness, I can taste the nutty, and definitely a lot of orange zest, and I'm getting a lot of wood spice on this one still. I can buy into the coffee note now though. That's hitting me more in the nose. I'm not as offended by the taste and nose of this whiskey as I was the first time around, so that's a good thing. I'm glad I tried it again. It's still not one of the top whiskeys on my list, but I can understand how the flavors could be appealing to some people, and if you've had this whiskey and you want to tell me more about the Dead Guy, I would like to hear about that in the comments below. I think I'm going to start a new glass here, and we'll leave this one as the infinity glass for the tasting in case I don't want to taste more than just a little sip of each one. All right, let's keep moving forward. My next whiskey on the list is day 3, which is Milk and Honey. This is Elements Peated Israeli Single Malt Whiskey. And the flavor notes are ginger, vanilla, grain, oak, peat, fruit, and lemon. This is a 46% whiskey that I remember enjoying very much on my first taste. Let's see what it's like on the second one. I still like that fruity note when I first nose it. The fact that it's peated isn't coming through right away, but there's just a hint of that smoke. And I am getting a lemony zest on the nose. There is oak spice, and there is a nice balance of sweetness. The peated nature of it is, again, very subtle. I'm getting more wood grain than I am the peat and smoke. Like if you're near a campfire, kind of get that smoke taste in your mouth. You're not right there, you're not right on top of it, but you have that little hint of it in there. It's very subtle, and it balances nicely with the sweetness. And I'm still as impressed with day 3 as I was on the first tasting. I'm really enjoying this, and I'm thrilled that an Israeli single malt is pushing forward to the top of the list instead of just your usual run-of-the-mill Scotch single malt. All right, this one's going in the infinity glass. Day 4's whiskey is twofold from Starward. It's an Australian double grain whiskey. Did I leave that little bit in? Oh, that's a mistake. I'm pouring too big. You just saw me. You're supposed to stop me from doing this. I like this whiskey, but I can't afford to drink this much whiskey in a tasting like this. Day 4, Starward twofold, has apple, berries, pineapple, woody, caramel, nutty, spicy, vanilla, fruit. It's only 40% ABV, which is a mark against it, but I still really enjoy the nose on it. There's a lot of nice fruitiness there. The spiciness is a nice offset to the fruitiness of it. So if you haven't tried Australian whiskeys before, I think this is a good expression to start with. It's sweet, but not overly sweet. It's got enough spice in there, and the 40% won't kick you in the butt if you're not looking for a high ABV whiskey. Let me go ahead and pour this in the glass over here, because there's no way I could drink that amount of whiskey. And you know, this little bottle has too little in it, so our infinity glass is going to get a special dose of Australian whiskey. All right, let's get day 6 out. For that one, a little bit less this time. Day 6 is Penelope Bourbon. There we go, much better. Now, unlike the Starward, this Penelope Bourbon is barrel strength, so it's 57.5 ABV. And their notes are, in the Flaviar book, syrup, fruit, citrus, black cherry, orange zest, smoky caramel grain. It's sweet on the nose. I'm not getting hit with this barrel strength. I am getting the black cherries on the nose and the sweetness. Smokiness isn't apparent on the nose. The barrel strength does come through on that first taste. Very spicy. I get the syrup on the taste. The fruit is less on the taste. The fruit is more on the nose for me because it's barrel strength, because I'm getting so much intensity from it. Pouring a little bit more just because I want to add some water to it and see how that changes it. The water sweetens up the nose even more, takes away a little bit of that hit, and I get more citrus on the nose. I get a little bit more smoke from that now. Okay, so taking the ABV down really did make a difference for this whiskey. Try Penelope Bourbon with some water if you haven't tried it that way yet, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Day 7 is Omar Sherry Cask Taiwanese single malt whiskey. Now, I really enjoyed this one. It hit me right away as one of my favorites. Let's see what the flavor tasting notes are for this particular dram. Sherry, cinnamon, dark chocolate, oak, mandarin, orange zest, and some honey, malted barley, and vanilla. It's a 46% bottling in a nice sweet spot. So on the nose, I really get the orange note. Not so much for the zest for me, but the sweetness of an orange. I guess the mandarin orange is a really good note. They have it nice and big and bold on their notes, and I can see why. I get a little bit of plum notes or fig notes, and the vanilla is there too. See, I really like the levels of spice and sweetness to come through this. There was a little bit of raisin notes there. The finish is longer. It has that dark chocolate note to it, and I really like this dram, and I like the Taiwanese whiskeys in general. In fact, stick around to the end. I'll give you a sneak preview of the whiskey that's coming up in the next episode. All right, I still have 6 more to go, so let me push through this. Okay, day 8 is Frey Ranch Straight Bourbon Whiskey. That was too big of a pour. Dang it. I'm just so used to pouring bigger pours, and I'm used to caps going on too. All right. The Frey Ranch Straight Bourbon Whiskey is bottled at 45% ABV, oak, cranberry, cherry, vanilla, brown sugar, bread, spicy, grain, and off the bat, I really get some bread notes. I don't know if those hit me the first time around, but just maybe reading that note pushed them forward on my nose. I really like that. I like that even more than I liked it before. Spoiler, I did buy a bottle of Frey Ranch. Couldn't resist after I tasted it the first time. I said, I need to see if I can grab a bottle of this right away, which I did. On top of that bread, I'm getting some citrus notes, getting a little bit of pine notes on my nose. Christmas is still fresh in my head. I can understand why they're saying cranberries and brown sugar, because there's a little opposition there of the kind of the non-sweet fruit, and yet there's a sweetness behind it. The oak spice is pretty strong. It kind of tastes more than 45%, but I think that's the spiciness coming through. And I really am enjoying the vanilla notes. I guess I like the cherry and the spice and the mix of the sweetness, and it's not overly sweet. So it's one of those bourbons where I think I can sip it, enjoy it, and not get too fussy about it, but still has some interesting notes to it. And the nose changes a little bit each time, which for me is part of the fun of drinking whiskey. You know, you get new notes as you go through it. It's not a boring dram that you're sitting with, all right? Still 5 more to go. So let me pour this in the infinity glass. All right, let's move on to day 12. We're jumping a few days, and we're also jumping over the pond because this is the GlenAllachie 15-year-old single malt Scotch. Now, I wasn't overly impressed with this when I first tasted it, which is why I wanted to taste it again in this video. I had feedback that maybe I missed some things, so I certainly wanted to give it another chance. Let's see what the flavor tasting notes are for the GlenAllachie. Coffee, chocolate, spicy, dates, ginger, walnut, raisins, and those are notes that I really like, except for the walnuts, which I'm allergic to walnuts and pecans, so I don't dare taste those. There's also some salty notes in here, which I'll see if I get those on the actual tasting. I'm not getting briny or salty at all on the nose. I am getting a nuttiness, I am getting those dates. It smells like an older whiskey, and it feels like it should be an interesting whiskey. At 46%, they're not cheating us out of a few percentage points, which is good. I'm missing coffee on the nose though. It's very spicy on the taste, which probably made me in the first video think it was a higher ABV. It has the ginger spice, that's a great note. I'm really getting that now. I'm getting the chocolate. It's not dark chocolate so much as closer to milk chocolate. The finish is still short for me, which I would like a longer finish for this whiskey. And I'm still not getting the coffee notes. But I really like coffee, so I'd like the coffee notes. I am getting some more of the darker fruits. I am getting the raisins and dates, and it really tastes a little nutty. I do like this whiskey. I will stick with the GlenAllachie line of expressions and see what I can get out of them, because I want to investigate more, and some of you are very fond of this dram, so I'd like to give it a little more time and a little more effort in finding my favorite flavors of it. And maybe there's a different expression than the 15 that you prefer from GlenAllachie. Put that down in the comments, please, and I'll try to pick up a bottle. All right, still got a few more. Let me pour this in the infinity glass. On to day 13, which we're heading down to Texas. And this is the Balcones single malt whiskey. This Texas single malt whiskey is an American single malt, which isn't a defined category yet. They're still working on that, but it's a category that I've been promoting on this 24-day journey. And I think that everyone should take a good hard look at it and see what's out there, because there's some really special whiskeys. And I think Balcones does a great job of working on their particular expressions and making them unique. Let me see what the flavor notes say for this one. We have pear, butter, caramel, spicy, marmalade, sweet, toasted, orange, and banana. This is 53% ABV, so it's a little bit more intense, which means I have to watch sticking my nose way down in the glass. But I do like those initial notes. For me, I'm getting citrus, also get that sweetness right in there. Definitely some caramel, brighter fruits like the pear. I'm even getting a little apple on my nosing, and I can tell that it's going to be a little higher ABV because I stuck my nose down too far. But that first taste is really nice. I think they picked a great ABV. I think that going as high as 53% gives you that flavor burst. It's not overly spicy because there's a lot of sweetness there. Just the way they've treated this whiskey, I can taste the maltiness, but it's just such a nice, comfortable flavor. I think that's a great word for it. It's a comfortable whiskey. It tastes good. It is enjoyable. And that kind of sums it up for me with Balcones. I have had quite a few of their different expressions. I think every one of them has its place in the flavor profile. And I shouldn't drink more of it now because I have still 3 more tastes to go. So let me throw the rest of this in the infinity glass. See how that tastes at the end. Could be a good taste. Who knows? All right, next up, day 15 from Stellum Spirits. This is Stellum Bourbon. Bottled at a little higher ABV, it's 57.49%. And I remember having my struggles with this one, but liking it enough to put it on my gotta try again list. Spicy, marshmallow, woody, clove, sweet, vanilla, mint, berries, and oak. Well, at that high ABV for a bourbon, you're definitely gonna get some oak notes. The nose is a little hard for me. I'm trying to go off their nose to see if it helps me, but maybe that is the marshmallow that sits in there. I don't eat a lot of marshmallow. It's not one of my favorite treats, but I can maybe distinguish that from the rest because it's a little bit of sweetness there, but there's enough spiciness that it's hard to pick that out. And I'm getting some berries, so that's nice. And if I give it another nose or two, there's some vanilla in there. First tasting is pretty spicy, 57.49% ABV. That'll do it to you. Nice flavors though. And I'm getting the clove. There is definitely a lot of oak spice, and there is that hint of mint. Not my favorite note on whiskey, which may be the thing that threw me off on Stellum Bourbon. I do like this. I like the balance of sweet and spice, but I don't love it. So it's going to the back of the pack for this particular episode. But hey, again, if you have different experience, let me know in the comments. I always like to hear your thoughts about any whiskey, and we'll add this little taste to the infinity glass. Day 18, we have the Benromach 10-year-old single malt Scotch. Getting better those smaller pours. It's really hard for me, so be proud that I'm keeping them small. The Benromach 10-year-old single malt Scotch is bottled at 43% ABV, tropical fruits, peaty, sherry, spicy, smoky, citrus, neat. Again, that neat note drives me crazy. Oak, and dry. Okay, the neat and dry, I'm a little disappointed in those notes. Maybe it has a drying note at the end. I can get that. On the nose, I definitely get the smokiness, the peatiness. There's less sweetness here. The fruits are very mild on the nose. For me, there's a little bit of campfire and a little bit of zest. There's enough spiciness that makes it feel a little bit more than a 43% ABV. And I have to admit, there was a kind of a drying effect to the aftertaste on this. I wanted to try this one again because I don't know if I gave it a full tasting the first time. I think it fell apart on me a little bit, and I'm trying to find more to like about it. If you have one of the Benromach expressions that may interest me more than the 10, I'd like to hear about it, because even on the second tasting, I think this is good, but it's probably not one of those whiskeys that I'd say, well, I want to go out and buy a bottle of Benromach 10. Maybe there's an older expression that you've had that has better notes that I might enjoy. Because I'm not getting much of a finish, and all I'm getting on the taste is the smoke, spicy, and not a lot of sherry notes. I'm not getting dark chocolate or raisins or anything like that. It's a little light for me. I'm not terribly impressed with it still, even on the second tasting. Into the infinity glass, time for the last one. All right, day 21 is Stranahan's Sherry Cask American Single Malt Whiskey. I remember being impressed with this one. It also helps that it's later in the series and it's more fresh in my brain. They talk about raisins and cherry, honey, fig, sweet apple, leather, almonds, butterscotch, nutty. It's bottled at 47% ABV, so that cuts it above the level of having to chill filter it. And the nose for me is a sherry finished whiskey. I get raisins, I get figs, I get that citrus note. There's a little bit of nuttiness in there. I really like the finish on this one. Definitely can tell that there's butterscotch, the darker fruits. It goes down really well. I really appreciate that this is American single malt that's bottled at 47% ABV. Why not push the ABV up a little bit and see what we can do with the flavors? And I've become a fan of Stranahan's because of this tasting. I'm very interested in trying more of the Stranahan line of expressions. From what I understand, they were somewhat of a pioneer of American single malt. All right, let me put this in the infinity glass. This is the last one. Let's give this infinity glass a taste. A mix of all the whiskeys that I've tasted in this video. It's a very confusing nose. I definitely get some of the sherry notes, some of the fruity notes, plums and raisins. Guess we had our share of sherry finished whiskeys in this batch. The citrus is kind of pushed down. Unfortunately, as with a lot of infinity bottles or glasses, when you start mixing randomly percentages of whiskeys together, you might lose the characteristics of those whiskeys even if you let them blend for a little bit. It doesn't necessarily make a better whiskey. You put the best whiskeys together in a glass and you may get less than the sum of the whole. Not horrible, there's a lot of spice to it, some interesting flavors, but I'll stick with the individual expressions that went into this glass. They have more characteristics that were individual to each of those. Out of this group, what did I like best? Interestingly enough, I think that the Day 7 Omar Sherry Cask and Day 3 Milk and Honey from Israel, I like those best, along with the Stranahans, which I think was an impressive whiskey. Also, I'm going to give a nod to Balcones. That was a definite impressive showing for that whiskey in this tasting box. As a fifth one, what would I take? I'm going to have to go with Frey Ranch because I liked it so much on the first taste that I bought a bottle, and I liked it so much on the second taste that I'm glad I bought the bottle. So that's a good thing. So here is my choice of whiskeys. Did you have this Advent calendar? I know a few of you did because you've been following along with me and being very generous with your tasting notes and comments. Which whiskeys out of this Advent calendar series did you enjoy best? Let me know in the comments. For me, it's Day 3, Day 7, Day 8, Day 13, and Day 21. I liked all those and think they were pretty impressive. As for what's coming up next, it's a Kavalan. It is a Taiwanese whiskey. It has a port cask finish, and I'm excited to crack this bottle open. I've been very patient and not touching it until I do it on camera with you. That's coming out Friday at noon. It should be a good tasting. I'm excited about it. Well, that wraps it up for a 2021 Advent calendar. I had a lot of fun tasting this. Let me know in the comments if you've had the same kind of fun with the same Whiskies of the Galaxy calendar list. Let me know what your favorites were. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I appreciate it. Spreads it around YouTube a bit. And until my next video, which will be out Friday at noon, take care of yourself. Take care of those people around you. And cheers. Can't imagine being a whiskey blender. That's a tricky job. This is not good. It's all right. I mean, it's just not something I'd keep around.